Today we are in a special Parsha. Every Parsha is a special Parsha, of course. Today is Parsha Behaalotecha, and it begins with the flames of the Menorah, and that's what I would like to speak about today. So last week we spoke about, and we were in Parshas Naso, and we spoke about the 12 princes and their offerings to dedicate the Mishkan. And then Rashi explains that right after that, which is right here in the beginning of Behaalotecha, that the section about the menorah comes right after the offerings of the princes of each tribe. And the sages say that the reason for that is that Aaron needed to be consoled, because in this process, first, the people, the general people, brought their offerings. They brought what they had, gold, silver, garments that were of the right colors. They brought whatever they had to help to bring the menorah, to help to bring the Mishkan into reality. And then when they were really ready to do this, then the princes made their offering. Now you see the prince's offering had to do with the last things that needed to happen, including the ability to carry and to bring the Mishkan further into the desert, because now what we're going to go into in the future Parshas is the beginning of the journeys in the desert. But Aaron felt that he hadn't done anything at all, and he was a little bit dismayed about it, according to the sages, because he wanted to be part of the dedication. So God consoled Aaron by giving him the privilege of lighting the menorah. And in this way too, he would be participating in the dedication of the menorah, of the Mishkan. Now, God also let him know that Aaron's dedication was greater than that of the other tribes. And it quotes, and it says that Hashem says to him, by your life, your act of dedication is greater than theirs, for you will light and prepare the lamps. So we have to know what is so special about this, that this is greater than the offerings of the princes. So the Torah continues and talks about the unique quality of the menorah, explaining that this dedication would be a greater honor than all the other aspects of the service of the Mishkan, and that he was chosen to do this. So you have to understand what's so special about this, that we have an Aron, we have an ark, we have an incense offering. There's so many different components that could be given to Aaron to do. And this is the one that Hashem said you're going to do. So we need to know what's so special about this. So the Torah continues to explain the unique quality of the menorah and explaining why this was a great honor to have this dedication. So the verse continues and it says this, and the Hebrew word for this is zeh. This is the construction method of the menorah. And this, when we have the word this means that you point to something, and this is the word for great prophecy. Not a prophecy that's hidden, for that the Torah says ko, but when it's a clear, direct prophecy that it's like Hashem is pointing his finger at it, this is zeh. And that's what it says here. This is the construction method of the menorah. And Rashi says, Moshe had difficulty with constructing it. So God showed an image of the menorah to him with his finger. With God's finger. This is the zeh. That's why it says this is. So here we see the unique quality of the menorah, that all of the vessels of the Mishkan, the menorah alone was shown to Moshe as a direct vision from God. So interesting. What is it about the menorah that's more complex than other kalim, other vessels of the Beit HaMikdash? And what was it that Hashem needed to show? So Rashi continues, that the uniqueness of the menorah, it's even more so. It says he, meaning Hashem, constructed the menorah. And there's a midrashic teaching that God caused it to construct itself. Wow. God caused the menorah to construct itself. So first God says, Zeh, this is how it should be constructed, and shows this absolutely clear prophetic vision. And it's still, how are you going to do that? And then it says that God caused it to construct itself. So we're going to have to understand what that means and what's so special about this. So the Medrash brings that Aaron would have felt, that it was so important to dedicate the only item in the tabernacle that was actually made by God. So that's what we're saying, that the menorah was actually made by God. That the menorah, first God showed Moshe the vision of what it is so he could know how to make it, the same way that you copy something that you see what it is, so you copy it. And Moshe still couldn't do it. So Moshe just didn't know what to do. And God then caused it to be constructed of itself, which is, we're going to talk about what this means. So this is a very unusual situation. It's the only thing in the Mishkan that basically constructed itself, meaning God constructed it. So let's try to find out what happened. And Rashi explains that the menorah didn't just appear out of nowhere without any human involvement. And there was, what Rashi says, a person who constructed it. Now, it doesn't talk about that in this Parsha. This is not the first time. In Parsha's Truma, we spoke about how all the vessels of the Mishkan were made. But for those who want to know who constructed it, who did the little part, even though it's not mentioned here, Moshe was the one who was in charge of making sure that all the kalim were made properly. And he did that through Bezalel, who was the main artist. But they're not mentioned in this Parsha. And the reason for that is because the focus is on Aaron, who was receiving this special honor of dedicating the menorah. But the Medrash clarifies that the person who was involved in making it only had to make a small human effort, just the beginning, because God caused it to construct itself. Well, that's very interesting. What's going on here? In the book of Shemot, Rashi commented that the menorah was made by casting a piece of gold into the fire, by which God caused the fully made menorah to come out ready-made. This is in holiness, amazing holiness. So I just want to mention, for those who might like to hear a little gematria, a gematria is a numerical equivalent of two words. So it so happens that the word for fire is Aish, which is 301. And the word for menorah, Mem, Nun, Vav, Resh, Hey, is also 301. So the word for menorah and the word for the same. So when Hashem said, take this and throw it into the fire, it came out of itself. That's what it means that God caused it to construct itself. So let's see what's going on here. Why was this so complicated that Moshe couldn't do it the regular way? Construct, show Bezalel and Aholiav what should be done, and they do it. Because the menorah was made of one solid block of gold. And Moshe was instructed that this candelabra was to have one central column with 7 separate branches, one in the middle and 3 and 3, 7, and knots, meaning places that are round decorations, and flowers and cups and stems, altogether 49 ornaments. And and that it should all be made by hammering out one piece of gold. In other words, you could pull out from the gold to make each part, but you couldn't cut it off. So you couldn't like say, okay, well, do it, this one will be this way and this one. No, everything had to come out of the one. Remember that. Everything comes out of the one. And the menorah is the symbol of everything coming out of the one. So what happens here is that basically because all the parts had to come from the center on the physical level, how could you do that? How could you make everything out of one piece? But on another level, we have to understand that all the parts had to come from one center. So they weren't really separate parts, but they were unique expressions of the one essential source of the menorah, of the essential light. So all of this was coming to shine out of the essential light. And even though there were 7 branches, they were coming out of one place. So because of this, the sages of the Talmud said that the menorah was a testimony to all the inhabitants of the world that the divine presence rests in Israel. So this was due to a number of different things. There were a lot of miraculous aspects of the menorah. And the fact that it was shining like this and lit up all the time was showing that Hashem is with his people. So the menorah, we'll come to this some more, but the menorah actually represents the Jewish people. So we'll speak about that as well. But one of the miracles that happened was that Aaron would light the lamps, and he did this every day, but there was one lamp that never was extinguished, and that was the light of the western lamp of the menorah. So even though the lights would burn down at a certain point, and Aaron would come and clean out the lamps and begin again to light all the lamps, nevertheless, there was one that never went out, showing that God was always here, always lighting up our people. Okay, so not only was the menorah shown to Moshe by clear prophecy, but Moshe began the process, and then God made the menorah himself. So think about this just for a minute. So for those who make challahs, imagine you want to make a beautiful big challah, braided challah out of one piece. So imagine trying to push aside all the parts so that without pulling anything off, how difficult that is. Because the way we usually do is we divide it into different parts and then we braid one over the other until we get a challah. But to have one with 49 aspects of it was not something that even Moshe could do, even when Hashem showed him how to do it. So the menorah, which is right in front of the curtain of the ark in the holy, which is right in front of the Holy of Holies, the menorah symbolizes the Jewish people, since the purpose of every Jew's existence is to spread divine light throughout the world. Now, I just want to say that the menorah, where it was in the Beit HaMikdash, that's later, but in the Mishkan, who was going to see the light of the menorah? Who was allowed to go in there? And yet, the menorah is symbolizing the divine light that shines through us. And in the Mishkan and in the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, the window, they had, usually you have big windows that shine light in, and there was a small window going out. So the light shone out to the world. We also have to know that wherever we are, even in our homes, wherever we are, that in everything that we do, when we're having consciousness that we're serving Hashem and we're doing a mitzvah, we are shining light out into the world, whether you see it or not. These days, it's possible to understand how something very small could make a very big difference. This is a spiritual light that goes out into the world. Now, it's written in the Torah, the soul of man is the lamp of God. The soul of man is the lamp of God. So, and it says, with the light of Torah and the candle of mitzvahs. So by having the light of learning Torah, which we're doing right now, and the candle of mitzvahs, our people illuminate the surrounding environments. Now, the menorah, which we said is coming just from one base and going up, the 7 branches symbolize 7 different paths of divine service. The 7 different types of Jews. And that makes, still it had to come out of one single piece. And this shows that the various different qualities that we all have that characterize the Jewish people don't take away from our fundamental unity. Because diversity doesn't need to lead to division. And the development of true unity comes from the synthesis of all of our different approaches, and every person expressing their own unique talents and personality. So we're supposed to be ourselves. That's what these 7 branches are. Be yourself. Be who you are, and come from your essential place. But the essential place is the one that we share, all of us together. So not only is the menorah pointing to the importance of every individual, but we need to learn that when we're educating our children and we're teaching our students, we need to know that each person has his way, a nature of his own. So that's something that we need to know, that we need to respect that every person has his own nature. Now, this is very important because sometimes people think that they're supposed to be like everybody else. And people often try to be like everybody else, or to raise their children to be like themselves or like everybody else, or to expect people to be inspired by who they are. And we have to, when we're really inspiring another person and teaching another person, we have to teach them in their way. So it's very important. Each person has his way, and we have to raise a child or a student or whoever we're working with or inspiring in their way. So the previous Rebbe used to say that every individual Jew has a spiritual mission in life, and it's their mission to be done with their talents in their way. So even though we share the common goal of transforming the world into a dwelling place for God, and we do the same thing. We spoke about this last week. We do the same thing. We light our Shabbos candles. We start in the morning saying Modeh Ani. We are eating kosher food. We're all doing the same thing, but with a different intention coming from the uniqueness of who we are. So to transform the world into a dwelling place for God, each of us has to use our individual gifts and talents and tendencies. And this expression is unique. And what it does is, of course there's one God, but God is expressing himself through us. We are an expression of God, each and every one of us. And when we are doing our divine purpose in the world in the varied ways that we do them, the revelation of God becomes greater because it becomes multifaceted. Through each and every one of us, God is showing a different aspect of who he is. And that's by being ourselves. So we have to be ourselves. So of course we've spoken about how, there's a process of growing, but it has to be we who are growing. So what we're saying here is that a parent or a teacher shouldn't try to push all their children or students into a single direction, but we have to appreciate the gifts of each individual and cultivate their expression. It's always very interesting that, that when you're teaching Torah, you have to be careful that we're teaching, but we're not trying to push people into conformity. Instead, we're trying to relate to each student to internalize the truths of Torah in a way that suits their natures. It's very interesting. I personally believe that in listening to a Torah class or learning Torah, that it's very good if each person can ask themselves, what did I get from this Torah class that I want to integrate? What is it that is touching me and I want to integrate that? And what's very interesting is that it's different for the different people in the classes. Some people come up with one thing, different people come up with something else, because what speaks to you is unique. So, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So, so how is all of this shown to Aaron? What is it? His job is to light the menorah up. So in other words, he's going to be the one that lights up our people and lights up the individuality of people. So what is it that he's meant to see and what is it that he's meant to do? So the commandment was very specific. It says, Behaalotecha et hanerot. Now that's the word. Now that's the name of the Parsha. It's the first word in the Parsha. But wait a minute. When we light candles for Shabbat, we say lahadlik ner. We light the candle. But that's not the word that is being told to Aaron. What is the word? Behaalotecha. And what it means is when you raise the flames up. What does it mean when you raise the flames up? And Rashi explains that this means that the Kohen should apply the flame to the wick until the flame rises of its own and shines independently. So I don't know if you've ever had the experience I have, that you light a Shabbos candle, you put your hands up and it's not on. The light didn't take. That's very unpleasant. And we learn from this Parsha how to light things up. And the way that we light them up is by putting our flame to the wick and making sure that it goes up, that we stay with it until it goes up. And there's so much here that can be learned from this because it affects everything that we do. It affects everything. How are we doing what we're doing? Are we just, light it up, it's lit? Or is there more to this? So let's first talk about lighting up the menorah in such a way that we can learn how to light ourselves up, because we are also lighting our inner menorahs. So how do we do this? So we said that the 7 lights of the menorah represent different types of people, chesed through malchut, and it also represents our inner integration of the 7 qualities of the heart in each of us. So we know that each of us has 7 qualities within ourselves. There's a chesed kind of person, but I have chesed, gevura, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod, malchut within me as well. So let's think for the moment about how to raise. We spoke for a moment about how to raise children, and when we're teaching, that each one has their own individual candle, which is different than somebody else. But what about ourselves? So interpreting the concept allegorically, Rashi says this. He's talking about until the flame, that Behaalotecha, that you should raise the candles until they light up on their own. So what does this mean? So allegorically, Rashi says the flame, because we're talking about until the flame rises up, that every person is potentially a lamp. That's each of us. Every person is potentially a lamp, but potential isn't enough. Each person needs to realize his potential and become a flame producing a radiant light. So that each of us needs to be this flame that becomes the potential that we have, that rises up, that becomes radiant. But what does it mean, rises? So a person shouldn't just say, well, that's who I am and that's where I am. A person should not be just happy with his current level, no matter how refined it is. Instead, he should work to go further, looking for a higher and more complete degree of divine service. So wherever we are, when we're talking about that the flame rises, we want to keep going forward, taking this potential and making it rise up to keep growing. And until the flame rises on its own, what does it mean on its own? When we're lighting up our own inner candle, our own inner light, a person needs to internalize the influence of his teachers until their light becomes his own. So this is so important, that the knowledge that a person learns should be integrated in him until it gives him the power to shine independently. So in other words, whatever we learn, that in a certain way, that's what I was saying before, that each of us, when we learn, it's really good to take something out of it and say, sometimes it's the whole lesson. Sometimes it's a piece. Sometimes you say, this is exactly what I needed. But then we shouldn't forget about it. We should take that, which is the message to me, and work with it so that we integrate it into who we are. So when a person is going to rise on his own, the desire to go forward to his own purposeful work in the world should become his own nature. So that's who we are, that we want to serve Hashem, and that in doing this, we are understanding that our inner light needs to rise up and shine. So even if people don't have the encouragement of others, we have to continually work on moving forward. Now, Aaron cleaned the menorah daily so that the whole menorah should be ready to be lit every day with pure, clean olive oil. But what he did, and this is a method that we have to understand, that when it was time to light the flame, it says actually that there was a little step stool that Aaron went up on so that he could be over the flame, over the candles. And what he did was, when it was time to light, he stood over the light, put the flame to the wick, and held it there until it became clear to him that the wick had become lit. And only then did he go to the next wick. So each of us has the ability to have total focus, that at the time that we're doing something, that we need to focus on it, just like Aaron did, so that the wick took to the flame and the flame rose up. In our own work, we need to pay attention to what we're doing until it becomes clear that we accomplish the purpose of our action, one thing at a time. And this focus lights up. In Hebrew, it's called kavanah, that when we're doing with the intention to serve God, then it's really taking place. Then we're focused in it until it works. And not only should we become lit up, but we could light others up. And not in a way that makes them dependent. We light each light, and then it shines out on its own. And this is what it means that the light has been raised. So we are doing this within our own selves. that we all light our mini menorahs inside ourselves. And we do this by lighting ourselves with positive thoughts and the desire to do good things. It's interesting that the light of the menorah very often has to do with the mind and what we think is essential. So we have to have lit up thoughts, lichtige, light thoughts, thoughts of light. Now, this is, of course, a challenge for each person. We have to clean out the lamps, put in new wicks, take out the old thoughts that we don't need. Yesterday's news, as they say, take it out, clean it out. You don't need it. Just start again. And when we start again, we have cleaned it out, and now we put in brand new olive oil. And interesting that the olive oil also represents wisdom. And for the menorah, only the first squeeze of the olive, that the drip came in there. The olive was also used for other things, but the menorah, the holy menorah, was only from the first squeeze of the olive. In other words, the pure thought that we have, not what if, not those kind of thoughts, but the pure thought that comes to us, to live with that. And so when we do this, we are lighting up our own menorah with these positive thoughts and the desire to do good things. Also, each of us should envision ourselves as a source of influence, bringing spiritual consciousness out of ourselves. Sometimes it's in a very spiritual way, when people are very much by themselves. All that light and all that spiritual consciousness is coming out. And here we are on Zoom, talking, seeing each other, learning, and it's going out. And sometimes it's in different ways. Sometimes it's in the communities that we live in. So you never know how it's going to happen. Like the electrician who came into my house last week, and I wound up talking to him about the 7 Noahide laws. And I had a few cards that a friend in the neighborhood keeps on her front door step in case anyone wants such cards. And I explained it to him, and I gave him a card. And that came to me a possible way to do a mitzvah and serve God. So you have to be awake that when we are lit up, we recognize that we can light up the people around us. And they're also like flames of the menorah, and we try to light them up with encouragement, with helping them to grow, to become the flames that they are, to shine out the light of Torah on their own. So we light ourselves and we shine where we are. It's very interesting that just by being who we are and doing what we do, we are a light and we shine. And also we can embrace our environment and find circumstances and situations in which every element of existence can be used for a spiritual purpose. So that's what we're doing. So let's talk just for a minute about the inner menorah was made of itself. So we mentioned before that 301 is Aish and menorah. But what does it mean that the block of gold was thrown into the fire and came out as a menorah? So fire is godly fire. And through dedication to the one God, so when we have that dedication and we're taking our passion, our fire, and we throw it into the service of God, and we have one purpose, which is to make this place a world where God's oneness is known. And through whatever we do, all the things that we do, if we really put ourselves into it, and we throw ourselves into this from our own godly fire to wanting to serve God, who is also called fire, then what happens is that we come out from the depth of who we are. We don't do things superficially. We come out from that depth and we are essentially connected to God. So we are both coming from that central place as who we are, and we're dedicated to God. And this dedication brings us to become a single menorah, where we come out whole, that all the 7 parts of who we are come together in that dedication, and where the inside and the multifaceted, unique outside are the same. So this is a very important concept, that our inside and our outside are supposed to be the same. That when we're coming from our soul, then we're lit up on the outside too. Now, obviously, this is work. Even Aaron had to work. He had to clean out the old, what was the dregs of the old oil and the burnt out wick. And we all know this, if anybody lights oil, that sometimes these little black pieces that come out of that, all that had to be cleaned out to start again. So starting again means, like Rebbe Nachman says with my special quote that I like so much, you have to start new every day and sometimes many times a day. Start new every day and sometimes many times a day. That is so helpful when you feel like you're not doing it so well. Yesterday, it took me a long time to get started on my day. And at a certain point, I said, okay, Rabbi Nachman says you have to start new every day and sometimes many times a day. I said, okay, I'm starting new right now. Okay, so my day began then because I started new. So we have to know that starting new can be so many times, all the time, depending on what we're doing. So you wanted to call somebody and you didn't call them. Okay, so start new. You wanted to call them, call them. Or you're in the middle of a sentence and you go, I don't know if I should be saying this to this person. You can just start right in the middle of the sentence and say, I'm starting new. I'm going to change this communication. And instead of saying, you are so happy to see you today, instead of the other thing you were going to say, that we can keep starting new. So we have to understand that lighting the menorah is something that happens daily. We also have to know that the light stays on because there's always that one candle that never goes out. So we have to know that we're always lit up from the essence of who we are and not blame ourselves, just keep those flames going up. So we do our part, and we recognize that each of us comes from the same source. We have to appreciate the differences in each other and be supportive by recognizing that we all come from the same source and that we accomplish in our unique ways. And then the whole menorah is a light and it's shining out with this godly light. So when we're learning this about the menorah, it's interesting that we learn this so soon after our own counting of the Omer. We said the menorah has 49 aspects to it, and we just finished counting the 49 days of the Omer and coming to the 50th. And it says that man was created in the image of God. And among many meanings of this statement is that our soul's composition is like God's divine attributes. So let's just take a moment to look at these 7 midot, which are God's attributes, emotional attributes. I'll just talk about it for a moment because there are these 7 midot that we all have. Kindness, Chesed is kindness, Gevurah is severity, Tiferet is harmony. It's very interesting. I just want to say something about Tiferet, that Tiferet is called the middle line. Remember that the menorah has a middle line. And the middle line is our connection to God above and us below, that we are connected. This middle line is also harmony Tiferet, which is the integration of many things. And some say that that is the one candle that stayed lit all the time. There are two opinions about that, but many say it's that center one. So harmony, the third one's harmony, which is Tiferet. Netzach is perseverance. Hod is humility. Yesod is foundation, and Malchut is royalty. Now, while every soul has all 7 of these midot, usually one trait is more dominant and shapes the individual soul's unique service of God. So we have to know that we have all of them, but we also may find that one of them is particularly stronger for us. And that's basically how we do what we do. So let's just take a moment to look at that. So chesed is, so this is just going to be a simple understanding, is a soul, meaning a person, whose service of God is characterized by a calm and flowing love. And this soul is also overflowing with love for his fellows. So he loves God. His service is a flowing, calm love, and he's also overflowing with love for his fellow Jew. Gevura, which is severity, is a soul who serves God with awe and flaming passion. And this soul is also highly disciplined, with high expectations of himself and others, always working like the fire going up, up, up all the time. Tiferet is harmony, and that is a soul, a person who has achieved a real synthesis of kindness and severity. So of the two that we just had, Tiferet is able to both have kindness and severity together at an appropriate time in an appropriate way. So Tiferet is also the source of the soul's capacity for compassion. So you could see how compassion comes out of here, because when it's chesed and gevura, you say, I understand, I want to give to this person and do for this person. I also understand why I should limit this to a certain amount, or what is going to be good for them. For some people, you don't push them to make a l'chaim if they say, no, I don't drink. You have compassion. Okay, water is good. Would you like some water? I have some seltzer. What would you like? We'll make l'chaim on that. In other words, to be able to handle all the multifacetedness and not push, but understand the other person, do our part, and figure out how we can have compassion on each other and be together. The fourth one is netzach, which means perseverance. And that is a soul who's battling and struggling to make things happen, to go forward, but is ultimately triumphant. That's netzach, the doer and the shaker and the mover. And hod, which is next to, on the other side of humility, that's, hod is humility. And that is the soul who exemplifies timimut. Timimut is a sense of simplicity, not being complicated, like a good listener who really is able to listen. That timimut is feeling gratitude for God's goodness and appreciation. Hod is the first word we say in the morning is modeh, which is a hod word. So that's simplicity. The sixth one is yesod, which is foundation. And that's the soul whose unique talent is establishing giving relationships, intellectually or otherwise. That's the person who goes out and makes it happen, actually, who has that giving and doing. Malchut, which means royalty, is the soul who serves its creator in a majestic manner. Now, in the Torah, in the Menorah, all 7 branches were made from a single block of gold. And we may have different dispositions and different methods of serving God, but we are essentially one. And even with all of these qualities that we just spoke about, we may say, oh, that's me. Oh, that's my friend. Oh, that's my child, because we recognize that these qualities are being seen in other people. And also, to some degree, we have all these qualities ourselves. So we're able to rise up with all of who we are. But we have to know, even with our own inner qualities and with our unique qualities, that we have one purpose and one mission with different ways to accomplish the same goal by serving our Creator and being a menorah, a guiding light for the entire world. So each of us is a menorah. So interesting that when the menorah was thrown into itself, in a certain way, one way to look at this is that it's thrown into our soul, that who we are is thrown into who we really, really are in the essence of our being, and then comes out a light in the world. And since the menorah needs to be lit every day, then this is something that is an ongoing process to have that dedication, throw ourselves into who we are really, really, really are in the essence of our being, and then come out with the multifacetedness that we have. So each of us has to be a light and a menorah for the world. Now, Behaalotecha, this particular parsha, is describing the preparations for the initial stages of the journey of the Jewish people through the desert. And that's what we're going to be speaking about. It begins, we see it in this parsha, further into the parsha, and we're going to be seeing this in the next parshas, what happens as the Jews go through the desert. Now, the Baal Shem Tov explains that these journeys are reflected in the journeys of every individual through life. So ourselves personally, we have different journeys. Sometimes we go through something different, something new. So my friend just took on a Hebrew name. That's like a new journey. That's a new beginning, because it's a new approach to life. It's coming from a deeper place, which will be to a more expansive place. And sometimes we have journeys that we went someplace that really what we did there changes us and is essential for us and makes a difference for us. And sometimes where we are right now is a place in the journey where we are meant to be. So we have to know that we have our own journeys, and there are a number of different journeys as we go through life. So the Jewish people didn't stay at Sinai, where they received the Torah and constructed the sanctuary. That they might have felt that that was cozy, but they had another purpose. So they took the Torah and the sanctuary with them. So they took the Sinai experience, receiving the Torah. They integrate that to the best of their ability. We are still integrating this to the best of our ability. And they take the sanctuary. So we have our own inner sanctuary, which we're working on taking care of. Like today, we're speaking about lighting up the menorah in our sanctuary. And they began their journey through the desert of the world. So similarly, when we're kindling the light, raising it up in a person's soul, that should enable us to take the light of the Torah with us in our journeys through the world. By spreading the light of the Torah through these journeys, every individual is contributing to fulfilling the purpose of all existence, which is the establishment of a dwelling place in our material world. That this world is a place where whatever we do is meant to be coming from the inside with the consciousness of what does God want and what is my true desire that is really a good desire that God would like me to do. So by spreading the light through these journeys, every individual is contributing and establishing this dwelling for our material world. But this journey of the Jewish people through the desert is also interpreted as an illusion of the journeys of our people through the ages. Remember, God took the Jews out of Egypt to bring us to Mount Sinai. Then God gave us the Mishkan. Then the purpose was to go to Eretz Yisrael, to have Mashiach. Actually, the beginning, Mashiach before Eretz Yisrael, to have Mashiach. And when we're doing this, we're going toward this fulfillment of our purpose here, that we are going toward revealing that Mashiach is here, and Mashiach will do what he's doing, and everyone will do what they are meant to be doing. And then we will fulfill what we came into the world to do. And then from there, even more than now, we will be truly a light to the nations, because as we are, we will be able to have the Beit HaMikdash, and we're going to see the Kohanim at the Beit HaMikdash. The menorah will be lit, and we will be in a place that is the most harmonious for our service of God, in our own way of being a nation of Kohanim and of bringing the light out to the nations. So may that be immediately, and with joy, and with health, and with all of the blessings for each and every one of us.